The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Pastor Mai, good afternoon. We're open line on Mannin Line today. Call 66 13 68, text or WhatsApp 166 177, email studio@manxradio.com. On lots and lots of subjects last week, including, of course, cutting the trees and the bushes and the shrubs around and about where you live, whose responsibility it is, and whether or not you should or shouldn't be doing it, and whether or not the commissioners will prosecute you if you end up doing it when you shouldn't do it. Get it? Got it? Good. And if you have got any spectacular examples of where the DOI hasn't cut the trees back, and they're obscuring traffic signs, then by all means do get in touch. I think quite a few of those. Again, kettle, pot and what have you, well, by all means do get in touch. The Chief Minister admits that the government's position on renewable energy is likely to be challenged in the run-up to next year's general election. Of course, we aren't too far away. It's just over a year. It will be the Thursday, the 24th of September 2026. So what's that? A year and 2 and a bit weeks. 8 a.m. till 8 p.m, Thursday the 24th of September next year, when the new House of Keys will be elected. What on earth is going to be on everybody's mind? Well, you can guarantee that certainly wind power will. You heard Mr. Cannon saying he insists it's still right to be pushing on ahead with the agenda to give the Isle of Man energy security, he said. That's really what it's all about, energy security. So the fact that we need electricity, and at the moment it's being provided by the Pulrose Power Station with a little backup from here, there and everywhere, but energy security is what we need. Council of Ministers recently accepted for examination this application for an offshore wind farm, the one done by Ørsted, while proposals for the onshore wind farm development still in place. That will be the Manx Utilities Authority, the old MEA. The Electricity Board will be doing that. Well, I'll let you hear what Mr. Cannon has to say.
There is certainly, and I suspect there will be certainly, an element of frustration if people are asking for views from politicians, particularly from ministers. Do they think it's right? Do they think it's wrong? And they're not getting an answer.
It's not just current ministers either, because there will be people standing who have very strong and clear views, perhaps don't understand that if they express those views, they end up not being able to take part in the decision.
So it's entirely possible that a decision could be made by a new council of ministers, whoever that set of ministers were. It could, for example, actually be delegated out to the Legislative Council, or primarily members of the Legislative Council, because during an election campaign 24 of the MHKs had somehow conflicted themselves, and in order to avoid the legal challenge that would come with that delegation took place. I'm not clear as to how that challenge would take place. Were at the end of September 2026 there to be 24 MHKs with clearly stated objections to offshore wind. I think that's...
Or even in favour.
In favour, but I think,
yeah.
But obviously clearly there's going to be more difficulty on the latter front. But even if planning is granted, the certainty and clarity about that's being delivered and where it's going to plug into and how it's going to supply energy still remains an unanswered question. So this is quite frustrating, I think, in many ways. I suppose one of the disadvantages about being a small island is that getting the certainty in these sorts of, and trying to maximise, for example, our own territorial waters to deliver the type of energy and scale of energy that really is needed for this type of investment is probably been harder than people envisage.
So, what do we do? You heard what the Chief Minister said. The fact is that the government is on track. It's going to happen. They've put this out now. The examination for the application for Ørsted to do the offshore wind farm. The onshore wind farm is on track. It's tempting, and it is often very tempting for people who are against this to say, well, just stop it. It genuinely isn't that easy. You just simply can't just put a cross with a big red biro through this and say, we're not doing it. So what do you think should actually happen now? You heard Mr. Cannon saying that this started 10, 15 years ago. This hasn't just been dreamt up in the past 20 minutes. This was policy that's been put forward years and years ago, has been voted on multiple times. Most people who were elected last time were talking about climate change, and the wind farms are seen as a method to combat climate change. So, what do you think? I mean, as I say, it is tempting just to say, well, forget it. Tear it all up. If only everything in life were as simple as that. The politicians will have to juggle this around. Some of the politicians, as you heard Mr. Cannon say, who are for it at the moment, who may change their mind, will be conflicted in the future, may have to exempt themselves. And as he said, this decision could possibly go to LegCo, the people who aren't elected by the public. Complicated, isn't it? It's tempting to think it's simple because you might just disagree with it. But what do you think about it? Climate change, I think, is a really divisive, and it suits the government as people have something to distract them from day-to-day mismanagement of our lives, says Gaz. Yeah, that's all very well, Gaz, but where do we go? I mean, disagreeing with something is really easy. It's much easier to knock a building down than build one. So what do you think should actually happen, apart from disagreeing with what the government does? What do we do? Sai said, somebody commented last week about methane and volcanoes. Most methane leaks are from the fossil fuel industry, says Simon. Well, there is debate about where the most methane comes from. Certainly, methane does come out of volcanoes. But a lot of methane emissions come from agriculture. A lot come from agriculture. Followed by the energy sector, which of course it means emissions from coal, oil, natural gas and biofuels. Historic methane concentrations in the world's atmosphere ranged, I think, between 300 and 400 nanomolecules, I think it is, during the ice ages. But it's gone up and up. However, I mean, you have to say, in agriculture, two of the most prevalent sources of methane are flatulence from bovines, i.e. cows with their umpteen stomachs, and also rice paddy fields where they grow rice. Rice fields actually emit methane into the atmosphere. So what do we do about that? How do we combat that? And your thoughts on the TT. We had many comments last week about what to do because of the TT being changed for next year, and the fact about medical cover, about marshals. That's always the vexed question about whether or not you get enough marshals for the TT itself, and relying on marshals. How you treat marshals is another thing, whether or not marshals should get privileged travel. Mr. Cannon suggesting that he has two big policies: to increase workers via migration and to invest in renewables, says Gaz. Gaz says, what has he done? Well, he's the Chief Minister, Gaz, and migration is something that has always happened. Always happened. The fact is, we simply aren't having enough babies on the Isle of Man. The death rate exceeds the birth rate. And then with the attrition of young people leaving the Isle of Man and not coming back, we need migration. Just as simple as that. I'll be asking how they feel, what they think they've added to government and the island since the last election. What have they achieved with regard to the issues mentioned in their manifesto, says Andrea. Whereabouts is that, Andrea? Whereabouts are you in, Andrea? Which constituency will you be talking to? Andrea, will you be standing yourself? Again, politics is always regarded as a spectator sport. It's something that you watch other people do. Lots of people are very, very interested in where we are now. And if you're so interested, it may be said, have a go yourself. Say something about it. Do something about it. It's relatively easy to become a politician on the Isle of Man. You stand, you get enough votes, and you're in. I know that's the same for everywhere, but we are closer to our political machinery than most places around the world. So if you want to become a politician, then you can. However, on another subject, have you seen this pony at Skyhill? DEFRA says it's monitoring closely the last surviving feral pony at Skyhill. Now, a herd of them is thought to have lived in the area of Glen Alden for decades after being released into the wild in the north. Now, in recent weeks, the government veterinary officers visited the site along with Manx Wildlife Trust to inspect the animal, referred to as Sky the feral pony. It's an all-white pony. Have you seen Sky, the all-white pony, around the north of the Isle of Man, around Skyhill? Jessica Taylor Welsh spotted the pony.
I look to my left and I see this, honestly, it was like a mystical figure. And, you know, I've had horses and things in my life, and it's an all white, or as a lot of people would say, grey in the horse community. And it was just standing there looking at us as we're trekking along, walking towards it. We were probably about 20 metres, 30 metres away from it. None of us were ever in any way of going to go see it or try and touch it or anything like that. I walked to go walk past it, and as I was looking at it, I noticed that it had its left leg up, and that's not a great sign. I have fallen in love with her completely, and that's why I wanted to name her Sky the Wild, because she's the last one we're ever going to have. They say because she presents like that, she's obviously not in huge amounts of pain, because if they were, they wouldn't be very healthy. What they've decided to do, which I think is the best part of the update, is not only have they gone out and actually made the effort to go and find her, but they are now going to take her under their wing and monitor her. And that is something that just really makes me want to smile, because she's not alone now. She's got rangers, and in partnership with the Manx Wildlife Trust, she's got rangers and the vets who will keep an eye. And I'm not saying it's every day, it's going to be every month. It'll probably be maybe once every 6, maybe once a year. But it means that if she is in trouble, somebody will be there to see it, which means that she gets the best welfare care of a wild animal.
Well, have you spotted this pony around and about? It would be nice to, and as she said, please don't approach the pony, as she's rather timid. But an interesting aside line. Ali says, look, Andy, on and offshore wind farms, it's easy for the government just to say stop it. But it is easy to put a stop to onshore wind on the Isle of Man. We're simply not qualified to do this cost effectively. As for offshore, the government should ensure the very best deal for the Isle of Man, supply and proper remuneration. The turbines outside our waters are coming anyway. The people looking after the wind farms in the sea have the expertise. Unfortunately, whoever oversees striking deals for the Isle of Man has a poor record. It concerns me a lot, and nothing that Mr. Cannon says reassures me. It's getting closer. I mean, it is getting closer. A message also in from, this came in the end of last week. This is from Dave, who just said, when people are saying that these, you'll be able to see these wind farms and they'll get used to them. Some people are saying that you'll just get used to them. Well, that's quite easy if you're at sea level. And lots of people are talking about wind farms, kind of the perspective of looking at them from sea level. Lots of people are quite high up on the Isle of Man. The sea, the landscape rises quite rapidly from the sea in places around the Isle of Man, particularly on the east coast. Anybody living or working around there will see these things, these 1,000-foot monsters, really at eye level. So they will be very, very visible. Well, that's true, Dave, but the trouble is that once they're up, there's no putting them down. You can't really say, well, I don't like the size of that. Can you take it away? So who knows? Who knows what we'll get to? And let me see. According to the Chief Minister, Comyn's discussing future energy supplies. Electricity is probably second only to water in modern-day needs. Strange that the head of Isle of Man Utilities isn't even a minister, says Peter. Well, yeah, you don't have to be a minister to be head of Isle of Man Utilities, Peter. He happens to be the kind of political head of that. They do have people who run the whole company. But in terms of water, I don't think we're in any danger regarding water on the Isle of Man. I think we'll always have plenty of that. I'm in Douglas Central. If I thought I could make a change, I would. But it would be like me flogging a dead horse. Will you be standing, says Andrea. Certainly not, Andrea 538. Douglas Central, of course, is... it's Chris Thomas and very good. If farmers in the public or the public have to trim their trees overhanging the road, do they have to apply for a road park closure in order or traffic management order from the government, as now that's left to the landowner to look after their trees? Will they be liable for any damage to buses and coaches? Nobody said if you have to go out into the street or into the road to trim. I presume you have to apply for that, a traffic management order, but nobody said that. I'm sure they'll make it very easy. Inward migration isn't the problem, says Sam. The problem is cultural, especially religious people that keep within their own communities, says Sam. So, Sam, 50, I don't quite know what you mean, Sam. We've always had inward migration. Always had inward migration. So, and we will continue to have inward migration. So, what do? What about the methane produced by human beings, says Chris. I don't know that human beings do produce methane. Mr. Cannon says Gaz is suggesting that his two big policies is to increase workers and to invest in renewables need attention. Right, call 66 13 68, email 166 177, WhatsApp 166 177, or you can email studio@manxradio.com. Our population imbalance is largely caused by past immigration. You don't fix it with more immigration, says Mark. We have hundreds of youngsters leaving school every year. Train them for the roles we need, says Mark. Again, easier said than done. What about people who want to go to universities off the Isle of Man? And if they don't want to come back to the Isle of Man, you can't force them to come back to the Isle of Man. So how do you, what do you do to, I mean, and again, this is nothing new. Young people leaving the Isle of Man and not coming back has been with us for decades and decades. Quite what you do to entice people to come back to the Isle of Man, well, have a think about it. The export of fossil fuel electricity, why are we allowing such high levels, says 143. Again, if you could send me those references, 143, as to where you get the figures as to how much electricity we are exporting, then it would be good to hear. Text, email, call, or WhatsApp, you're on Mannin Line.
Our island is beautiful and trees enrich our landscape. If you have trees on your land, then you're responsible for checking and maintaining them. Diseased or dead trees can endanger pedestrians and vehicles, so please ensure that you regularly check and trim your trees to keep everyone safe. There is lots of information online with details of landowners' responsibilities. To find out more, visit gov.im/trim your trees.
I began to struggle with the stairs, but I didn't want to leave our family home. So my daughter told me about Acorn Stair Lifts and their new showroom in Douglas. I was able to try the stair lifts and find the right one for me and the home I love. They were so friendly. The whole process was hassle-free and they offered the whole package from installation to servicing. Choose the island's first choice for stair lifts. Acorn Stair Lifts, South Quay, Douglas.
Call Acorn Stair Lifts now on 672 414 or call into our Douglas showroom.
Order! Order! In this case for Manx Car Store, let's review the facts. Firstly, you handpick an excellent range of quality cars for all budgets, are a trusted car sourcing specialist, you knowingly open 7 days a week, and are subject to an excessive number of 5-star web reviews. How do you plead?
Guilty.
Very well. This court hereby declares Manx Car Store 5-star.
Don't take their word for it. Find out for yourself. Visit manxcarstore.com or find them on Facebook.
If your love for wild things on the Isle of Man extends further than Keys Question Time, join me, H, as I explore a few aspects of what really makes man wild and the island a special place to live. Its natural environment, the plants, creatures and organisms which inhabit it, and how we can not just enjoy them, but actually live in harmony with them.
Wild thing, think I love you.
Wildman, Mondays 5:30 and available as a podcast straight after broadcast via maxradio.com or your usual podcast provider. Wild Things on Wildman.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
27 minutes past 12. Oh, by the way, I must say hello to the captain and the crew, the officers and the passengers of the Crystal Serenity, currently anchored out in Douglas Bay. Hi to everybody on the Crystal Serenity, dashing around the Isle of Man, and you brought wonderful weather with you. Thank you for popping and seeing us today. Here's Wilf with us now. Hi, Wilf.
Hi, Andy. Just a bit of amusement, I think. Now, this white pony up on Skyhill.
Yeah.
That'll be the remnants of my father's herd. My father and John Quill, Prosdick's farm. Many years ago, they had a herd of over 30 ponies up there. And, well, it's just just an amusement. They're all sort of, well, the people have died off now. The ponies have died off. It'll be one that's left on the hill, that's all it'll be. But the thing was, this is just an amusing little story. When they were building heavy up Glen Alden, different places, bungalows and what have you, I'm getting ahead of the story now. The law in the Isle of Man is you fence animals out, not in.
Right.
An example is, if you have an open plan garden next to the road, you have to have a fence around it. Stop animals going in, because the law was, or still is, you can drive animals on the road. And my old man and his friend John Quayle, the farmer, were driving the herd of ponies up Glen Alden, and there was a fellow, he just built a new bungalow. I'll leave his name out of it. It's a strange name anyway, but anyway. And he just laid the lawn. And of course, he had no fence. And of course, where the ponies went, well, they had to, didn't they? All over his lawn. See? And put little holes all over his lawn with the little feet. Anyway, he went mad. My old man said he was jumping 2 foot off the ground and he was eating cigarettes. Anyway, and threatening to do all kinds of things. And then, of course, we told him the law. And, of course, John Quayle had to add to it, make sure you've got a fence next week, because we're fetching a herd of elephants up. So there you go, and it's true. It's perfectly true.
So when did your dad take? When did they have that string of ponies? When was it? How many years ago?
40 years ago.
Right, and this is the one that's left.
That'll be the only one that's left. It'll be a remnants of one of them. It's not you couldn't call it a feral pony. It would be a tame pony at one time. That's how it's standing, looking at people. It's used to people.
Right.
They were doing a trek up there. People paid to ride these ponies over the hills.
Okay.
It's as simple as that.
All right. Wilf, we appreciate it. When in doubt, blame Wilf Young. That's it.
That's the one.
Okay.
That's the one. I'm in trouble for all kinds of things.
Oh,
right.
well, aren't we all? Thanks for calling, Wilf.
Right. All right.
Cheers now, 29 minutes before 1. And thanks to Chris who sent me the Manx Utilities financial statements. You can download them as to how much electricity has actually been exported from Pulrose. For 22-23, that's years 2022-2023, it states that it is 37% of electricity generated by Pulley is exported, and for 2023-24, 39%. So basically, almost 40% of the electricity from Pulrose is actually exported. I wonder how much we're charging for that when we send it away. And is Juan's with us now. Hi, Juan.
How are you today, Andy?
Very well, thanks. Yeah, very well. Lovely day, isn't it?
Good, isn't it? Yeah, that's the last remnants of summer, I think, is it? The last remnants of summer.
It's an Indian summer. I hope we have one later on this year anyway.
Yes, we can only hope, can't we? We can live in hope.
Can I say Indian summer, by the way?
I don't know. It might be on the grey list. I don't know. You have to be very careful about that one.
All right.
You don't want to wake the wokies up. Feeling a little controversial with this sunshine out. Here we go. Let's have a go. Just listening to the Chief Minister's statement yesterday. He was on with Phil Gorn, wasn't he?
He was, yeah.
Yesterday. Yeah, if anyone listens to it. Hopefully people will tune in and have a listen to what he was saying. But I always go by the feedback on social media, because that's where you get most of your feedback these days. And, I mean, you look at the comments now, I mean, 250 comments on some of the things that's being put on there. So the conversation around town is very, very hot of what's happening, and as per the listenership on this show, it shows that people are interested in the demographic changes on the island and what's going on. So I listened to Alpha. I don't know whether it was a kind of a speech for next year for the election or what, but there's certain things there. We're talking about we should have bought the steam packet, and quite right, you should have bought the steam packet. I think it should never have left Manx ownership, a lifeline like that. But I think the question would be, was it actually worth spending 135 million? And that was on his watch as Treasury Minister, to buy that back. And I kind of link that to the energy debate that we're having now. And yes, we do want energy security, totally. I don't think anyone is against that. It's the costs and the price of it. And that's going to be borne later on. And again, maybe a mistake was made with the prices that we've paid for the steam packet, and on the onward price, the boat price and the ferry terminal price. The steam packet has had millions spent on it since its purchase now, and that's not stopped. So I think the correlation there with how much do we spend on this and which way do we go. There's quite a few points there that Alf was talking about. And again, we're talking about inward migration, which is a very hot subject at the moment. And like we said, a lot of places we need workers and we need inward migration. And I think maybe should I say in the terms, I think, was it Michael Caine says, was it in one of the films, I only wanted to blow the bloody doors off. Well, I'd make the statement of like, we want inward migration, but I didn't think we were going to bring half of bloody Eastern Africa here. It's showing its signs within the community, and the community are very, very conscious of the quick changes that this government is making to things over here. And again, people who come here and embrace our culture is great. I mean, we had a fantastic South African day on Sunday. A lot of people up at the Fun Barn, and a lot of people do integrate with our society. But there is concerns of people who might be able to come over to the island that won't integrate. And if we look at what's happened in the UK, and I think a famous presenter actually was caught on video saying during TT week over here, someone who's just moved here, keep this island as it is, don't make it like it is over there. And I think that's quite right. We talk about integration. There's not a lot of integration from some religious sects of people in England, and that's quite clear. And I say to people, if you want to get a good hold on this, go and live in the old mill towns of Bolton or Oldham and get a feel for what's going on there. And I'd like to make a bold one here, and maybe you can put this towards Jane Poole Wilson tomorrow, because unfortunately I might not be able to get on to question her, and I do have some relevant questions, but I would go so boldly as to say at this stage in time we should ban any religious face coverings on the island.
Okay, that's your suggestion, yeah?
I do, and for various reasons. I think it's offensive. I think it makes a statement that then people do not want to integrate to the society that they have come to, for one. And secondly, on Jane Poole Wilson's provisos that of security for the island, on equity and inclusion, obviously, that face covering should be banned for our security. Purely on equity and inclusion, which is, of course, what everyone's working on these days. And I know that, back to what Alf was saying about business here, and I think he needs to be careful, and I have said this to him personally, on reading the room. And I'm sure his people around him have told him about reading the room and the thoughts of the general people who live here, have lived here all their lives, paid taxes and insurance here, about what he's doing and where he's taking the island, and supporting the people of the island rather than the people who are maybe bringing the money into the island, the KPMGs of this world, the Capiters and the Standard Charters. He needs to get a balance. Because this will probably show next year in the election that people are wanting change. People are wanting change in Europe. People are wanting change in England, and we're in the precipice of a massive change at the moment. And I think we need to be very mindful of keeping the Isle of Man as it is. Yeah. Pull the drawbridge up and keep on what we've got.
Well, people do. Everybody wants the way. It's kind of customary, isn't it? People want it the way that things used to be. But unfortunately, that's not the way the world is. The Isle of Man has always sent people to the four corners of the earth. So it can't really complain if people from the four corners of the earth want to come here and contribute, Joan.
And you put the word on you hit the nail on the head, Andy, with contribution. Contribution and joining in with people's society and culture. Respect people's culture. If you're going to move here for whatever reason, then expect the culture. Don't expect people to change for them. And you're going to get the wokies in the world saying, well, the England has done that for many, many centuries to other countries. Well, that was then, and this is now. And we're talking about the Isle of Man. We're talking about our future and the island. And no, we don't. We should hold our ground. If people want to come in and integrate, absolutely fine. I have got some fantastic friends, African friends, and Muslim friends. And Muslim people are not the problem. The teachings of Islam is the problem, and the teachings of the Quran is the problem. And that's quite notable in many places. And certain areas, they do not want to integrate with the people in the area that they live. And I think we just should be mindful of that when we're bringing this in. I mean, Alpha said now that they haven't got a handle on who's coming in here, which I've said all along, that they haven't got a handle on who's coming in here. And we really need to be mindful in these times that's coming up, where I think in the death of the fiat currency system, there's going to be a lot of turbulence in the world coming up. I think the Isle of Man is unique, and we can pull its drawbridge up and sit this out. But we've got to be mindful of that, and we have to have a group of politicians in to lead us on the right path to do that with.
Okay, all right.
Cheers, Andy.
We appreciate it. Thanks for your opinion today. It's 20 to 1 if you want to agree, you want to disagree, whatever you want to do. Of course, you have a right to get in touch on Mannin Line, your public access programme, by calling 66 13 68, text or WhatsApp 166 177, email studio@manxradio.com. Of course, if any time you hear anything on Mannin Line that you would like to respond to, it is your right. It's your right to get in touch. There's a right of reply to everything that's said on Mannin Line, and it's your right. I agree with Juan, says Ian. And I got a note in from Nicola who said, I think our politicians should start speaking as they hear from the public. It's too often that we hear politicians couching their speeches in political terms, almost in managerial terms. I heard Alan Bell talk about this a few weeks ago, talking about how we need harsh rhetoric now. Alan Bell, of course, former Chief Minister, former Treasury Minister, Home Affairs Minister, he was Tourism Minister. Alan Bell did a lot of jobs in his time as a Ramsey MHK and, of course, ended up as Chief Minister. This is what Mr. Bell had to say about, well, what he calls harsh rhetoric.
Sometimes you need harsh rhetoric to stimulate change and stimulate a reaction. Sometimes that harsh rhetoric is a bit tongue-in-cheek. Others, it's genuine anger, I think, which is expressed. But collectively, all these things coming together do bring about change. And there's often a great fear of change. People, because they're comfortable with today's status quo, they think, oh, well, it must stay like that. And you have to be prepared to accept change, but also to mould change in a positive and constructive way, which continues the growth that the island has enjoyed in all aspects. But it might mean treading on people's toes occasionally.
Any advice to the existing Chief Minister, Council of Ministers?
Well, I must admit I was surprised. This Tynwald, now we're closing in on the general election, only managed to pass 5 bills for royal assent this time. That seems to me a bit disappointing. And for the next Chief Minister, I wouldn't give them advice, but it does strike me, looking from the outside, that there needs to be far more effective teamwork and a more collective agreement as to what the best way forward for the Isle of Man is. And in particular, they need to give some great attention to communication, because the communication between government and the wider public has been absolutely abysmal. And if you want to get the Manx public on board, if you want them to back your policies, you've got to talk to people. You've got to tell them what the true situation is and get the public on board.
Former MHK, former Chief Minister, former Minister in many guises, that's Alan Bell. And the subject of harsh rhetoric. Any thoughts on that matter? Trevor dropped a note in just referring to concerns that we had last week about Astro 4G pictures and the link to cancer. There was a young lad in England who was on this rubber crumb stuff and got blood cancer. Trevor says the cancer link is debunked, apparently. A government white paper will be shared on this. I don't know whether it's a UK government or a Manx government one. He mentions the environmental concern and of the leakage into waterways, with the rubber crumb leaking into waterways. JD dropped a note in regarding the fact that JD has had issues with patient transfer. Ambulance to Nobles Hospital that can't walk without aids and needs to be carried in and out of the house. Occupational therapists previously requested a ramp from Garth commissioners, but the ramp request was refused, leading to JD being housebound and missing hospital appointments. George also on politics and civic engagement and said, look, if you don't stand for election but you later complain about the government, why complain? If you're that interested, get involved in politics. Become a commissioner. Become a councillor. Get involved. Volunteer. And Texter 603 criticises the wind farm policy as being irreversible despite starting 15 years ago and expresses doubt at whether the Isle of Man is or is not a true democracy.
Relaxation takes time. That's why downstairs at Millichap's new Stressless showroom, we encourage you to wander in, have a seat and lean back. Take time and find out which of Stressless's incredible range of different sized recliner chairs is right for you. Some have matching sofas too. Lean back on a Stressless. Relax your body and free your mind. Then you'll understand the Stressless Eureka moment. Experience the amazing new Stressless showroom downstairs at Millichap's of Ramsey.
Charity of the Week, brought to you by Kell Properties.
Motor Neurone Disease Association Isle of Man is a local charity supporting individuals and families affected by MND. We offer practical and social support. We act quickly as time is precious, but only with the help from our Manx community with donations and fundraising. Contact Christine on 494 966 or email mndassociation@manx.net.
This advert is brought to you by Kell Properties.
Triskel Promotions presents Rest at Peel Cathedral. On Saturday the 13th of September, selling out the Centenary and Barrowlands last year. With support from Colin Davidson and Jim Wilson. Tickets online only at triskelpromo.com or Facebook event. Rest at St Germans Cathedral Peel. A Triskel promotion.
Radio Caroline North is back on the air this weekend, and 3 lucky listeners will each win a quality Panasonic portable radio with FM and AM. That's the prize on offer in this month's competition. Our special guest broadcasters include Paul McKenna, so make a date to join us live aboard our historic radio ship Ross Revenge. Our broadcast is sponsored by Turton Tower Woodland Cafe, and it's on Manx Radio, 1368 AM, online, on smart speakers and DAB, straight after Carnaby Street.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Hey, Faster Mai, good afternoon. Thanks for joining Manx Radio this Monday lunchtime. Remember, tomorrow, Jane Paul Wilson will be on, along with her Chief Officer, Dan Davis. They'll be, of course, Jane is Justice and Home Affairs Minister at the Department for Home Affairs, looking after all the emergency services. So if you've got a question about anything concerning the emergency services, fire and rescue, the constabulary, ambulance and stuff like that, anti-money laundering, disclosure and barring, parole, police complaints, this subject of hate speech and hate crimes, and the road safety strategy. So presumably the 20 miles per hour will come into that. That's Jane Paul Wilson, MHK, and Dan Davis will be on from Home Affairs tomorrow. Thanks to Nigel, who said, I always wonder when politicians tell me that the world is going to end regarding the climate change and what have you. He said, do you remember years ago, people was always telling us that an asteroid was going to collide with Earth. He said, I do remember. In fact, I kept the paper. I was young and I kept the paper. It was 2003 when scientists warned that an asteroid could collide with Earth in 2025. Well, we've got 3 months left and it's nowhere to be seen. People talk about conspiracy theories, but we get these all the time, so really. And do you remember the millennium bug, how that was going to affect everything? You've caught us a few times, not this time, says this correspondent. Well, and a message also just says, I agree with Juan regarding this. This is Crystal. Thank you, Crystal. Good to hear from you. I agree with the last caller. There's a lot of animosity being created on the Isle of Man. So this, says Stewie, regarding and Donald said, Donald and Barry together. Donald and Barry said, political Islam is a danger to the Western culture. Well, I mean, it has to be said, if you look at the latest population survey, the people who follow Islam as a religion on the Isle of Man, I think is 0.3%. So quite what we do about that, I don't know. I want the island to be safe from radical change, says 228. And again, Mr. Cannon is too late. Now, apparently, gangs of immigrants are coming to the Isle of Man. Well, not according to the Chief Minister. Perception is often reality, but perception can be skewed. I mean, so... What exactly are you trying to say? Oh, Peter said, thanks for acknowledging my earlier message. I think you missed the point. 10 members in Comyn discussing energy, but the MHK in charge of energy is not in the discussion, says Peter. And I'm still waiting for the acid rain we were warned about years and years ago, says Pete. Well, one of the reasons that there is no acid rain is that, or that far less acid rain than there used to be, is the fact that coal-fired power stations simply don't exist anymore. And the people it doesn't affect us that much because the prevailing wind didn't used to bring it our way that much. But certainly the prevailing wind from the UK to the continent meant that there was acid rain that was affecting forests in Norway and also in Denmark. So all those coal-fired power stations that have gone mean that rain isn't there anymore. But I mean, we take your point. Anyway, if you've got any thoughts on that, then please do get in touch. And anything for tomorrow, by the way, for Jane Paul Wilson, what you need to do is if you either can't call or won't be able to get through, you can also call the answer phone on 682-631, leave a message, or email manninline@manxradio.com. Before we rip up all rubber crumb football pitches and artificial lawns, we need to put the danger in perspective. It's the exposure to benzene in the tyres. That's the same chemical in petrol, which is the issue. Remember, the rubber from tyres with the same benzene in it is being worn off roads every day. But the risk from being exposed every day to benzene in petrol fumes is vastly greater, much higher than a goalkeeper lying on a football pitch, and a mechanic and people being involved in the tyre manufacturer far higher. The story about rubber pitchers was around over 10 years ago, and there's not been a shortage of goalkeepers as it not having an effect. You're more at risk from dying by being hit by a car at 30 miles per hour, says Dick. So why doesn't the same law apply to hedges? Farmers get their roadside hedges cut for free. People see that and say, why don't I get my hedge cut for free? Well, it's not really cut, is it? Let's be honest. It's flayed. The farmers get their hedges flayed by the department. I mean, if you had a hedge and it got that sort of treatment, how happy would you be? How liberal is Liberal Mannin, especially when its leader has voted in favour of restricting free speech and assembly and made amendments to the Local Authority Amendments Bill that could only be described as a draconian power grab and an attack on local democracy. Interesting to hear what your listeners think, says Phil. Well, hopefully we'll be talking to Liberal Mannin soon, and also the other political parties on the Isle of Man, the Greens and the Manx Labour Party as well. And a few people asking what we're going to be doing for the elections next year. Well, if you listened 5 years ago, you just put big ditto marks under that. We will, of course, talk to every candidate. Every candidate who stands in the election will be offered an interview, and we often offer a video interview as well. We'll be going around every one of the constituencies prior to the event, talking to all the candidates. Believe you me, it'll all be online as well, so you won't be able to escape the election 2026. Thank you, Sammy. She said, what's this about hedges? Oh, Lord above. If you own land or next to a public road or path, you've got to keep branches trimmed to at least 5.3 metres above roads and 2.4 metres above footways. You have to remove dead, diseased or dangerous trees and growth, prevent trees from blocking signs, lights or drainage, and manage invasive species and clear fallen leaves or fruit. That's what you have to do. So 5.3 metres above a road, 2.4 metres above a footway. And obviously if you have a hedge, it has to be kept to the line of the pavement. Thank you. I'll say it before, I'll say it again, says Paul. Thank you, Paul. How do we calculate our carbon emissions? We can offset a lot by getting to net zero by incorporating our peat deposits, which are vast on the Isle of Man. We have mountains on the island made up of peat. Now, peat takes carbon out of the atmosphere, so are we including the effect of our peat deposits to help reduce our carbon emissions, says Paul. And by the way, the note is, if you don't know where the peat is when you drive on the mountain road, look for the tears in the mountain grass. If it's black, it's peat. Neil is right, says this correspondent. The big movement in nuclear right now is called SMRs. Small modular reactors. Rolls-Royce have been awarded the contract for building at least 3 of the plants in the UK. Wind is old news. 20 years ago it was new news. Now it's old news. Well, a small nuclear reactor. I mean, we talked about this on Mannin Line 3-4 years ago. In fact, I think we spoke to the guy at Sheffield University who's pioneering it. Just down the road from Sheffield, about 50-odd miles, is Derby, which is the headquarters of Rolls-Royce. Whether or not we could... I think these are the sort of nuclear reactors that power nuclear submarines, aren't they? Whether or not we could have one on the Isle of Man, how much it would cost, and again, how much the electricity would cost when it comes out of it, and, of course, with anything to do with nuclear reactors, the decommissioning of it. It's all about money. There's also something now called thorium salt. The question of thorium salt, which is the possibility for generating electricity in the future. The thorium salt reactor, which is not nuclear, it's a chemical reaction, and apparently it's very, very efficient. In fact, there's technology coming all the time to generate electricity for the future. Do you think we should watch and wait, or do you think we should go with the wind farm? Well, we are going with the wind farm. That's what it's about. Every decade, a new acid rain and global warming. Now it's climate change. All that happens is, says G, they put taxes up because of it. Well, taxes always go up, G. I don't know that it's just climate change. Taxes always go up. We have an opportunity to make our own laws regarding worker immigration, says Paul. No one should be allowed into the Isle of Man unless they can speak English or Manx. There are a lot of migrant workers on the Isle of Man who are unable to speak English. They're given instructions at the point of their employment by managers who speak their language, says Paul. Whereabouts, Paul? I mean, is this skeet, or do you actually know this for certain? For certain. Text, email, call and WhatsApp, whatever's on your mind. And I have to say, at the last census, I think it was something like 52% of the Isle of Man stated it followed Christianity. The next big religion? No religion. Some 45% said they weren't religious. I mean, not believing is a way of believing, isn't it? Isn't it? It's a belief in not believing, so it is a belief. That's it. Thanks to Chris on the phones today. So we're back tomorrow talking about home affairs. Do get in touch. Jane Paul Wilson and Dan Davis on Mannin Line tomorrow. It's a lovely day. Make the most of your Monday.
WINT